Perfect. There we go. And can everyone hear me okay? A thumbs up or nod if you want to take your camera off. If you don't, totally fine. Awesome. Thanks, Bree. I got a good affirmative yes. That always helps. Beautiful. Okay. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started this evening. We're going to talk about our next step in our year-long series. This is step 2. So, welcome to our year-long series. We are talking all about acceptance and commitment therapy, otherwise known as ACT, and how we at ABA Across Environs incorporate this in our practices. So, welcome. Last time that we were all together in January, we talked about assessments and getting the process started. We are going to start today and talk about all of our metaphors and what those look like. All right. So, how to teach these concepts of ACT using metaphors. How many of you, just like a quick show of hands, have used metaphors in your practice? Okay, cool. Maybe, not sure. Okay, that's fine. So, metaphors are often something that we will use to describe something or to present something that might be a little bit different. I think I've got a couple of people in the waiting room. I'm trying to get them in. So, hold on one second. There we go. Okay, awesome. Now I think we're getting everybody in. Beautiful. Thanks for bearing with us as we worked through our little technical challenges just then. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, metaphors are just something that we can use to talk about something. So, what are some metaphors that we use in everyday life? We might call something something that it isn't, but we know what we're talking about essentially. Um, we might use a simile. We might say something is, man, that is just like this. But really, what we're doing is just kind of describing how something feels or something how something might be, but we're not really using it, if that makes sense. So Rosie just said my favorite is the burnout highway, right? It's not literally a highway, but we are on like this pathway, and again, not a real pathway, but an internal thing towards burnout, or sometimes a physical. Okay, so we do use metaphors on a pretty regular basis. But today, what we're going to be talking about is how, what the science has said about metaphors. We're going to go through some examples, some video models, and then y'all are going to actually develop your own metaphor based on a context and possibly a learner. And y'all, I'm going to be completely honest. I just got back from London yesterday, and it was a fantastic trip. It was with Jennifer Ferris, and I'm not sure if you know her, but she has Sprout up in Western Massachusetts. She's a huge charter. Anyway, we were doing a workshop, and I am like jet lag, like literally just hit me right now as I was talking. So thanks for bearing with me. I thought it was going to hit me earlier today. Turns out I was wrong. It was right now. So everything's good. Everything's fine. But bear with me as we do this. Yeah, I got hit like a Mack truck. But perfect timing, Rosie. That's exactly what it is. What a time for metaphors. All right. So we are going to talk about what we talked about or what we learned, hopefully, last month when we went through assessments. One of the things that we're briefly going to review is the most important thing, and we're going to review this literally every single time, and that's not a metaphor. Here we go. Okay, I'm feeling good. Let me just have a little bit, a little more tea. It's good. The good thing about coming back from London, though, good tea. Hmm. Okay, so Values. What keeps us moving? What's keeping me here right now and not turning off the event and saying, you know what? We're just going to be all done for this evening and I'm going to take a nap. Um, the value of learning, right? The value of disseminating information, the value of disseminating ACT specifically. So what do we do? Well, I'm going to keep the discussion going and I'm going to do it one slide at a time, right? That's my committed action. And I'm going to take some perspective taking, which might be, well, next month's probably going to be a little bit different. The last one was different. It's okay that this time I'm tired. Just like how some of y'all showed up today, despite of whatever else is going on, and you have your own shit that you're carrying, right? That's fine. Thanks for showing up tonight. I truly appreciate it. So, how am I going to be present? Well, I just did it just then because I thanked y'all for being here. I acknowledged what's happening in the room right now, right? And I'm here. My feet are on the floor, my hands are on the clickers, and I'm ready to go. And then, how might I separate myself from this a little bit? I just did it a little bit ago when I said, I'm going to have a sip of tea. Yes, that was perfect and exactly what I needed. Also, I also can find that separation to diffuse in that I recognize that again, this is just one thing. It's all right. So I can accept that this is where we are right now and I don't have to control it at all. We're just going to move forward. Does anybody have any questions, though, specifically about assessment or something that we talked specifically about last month? If so, just put it in the chat real quick before we move forward. I will say when we talked about assessments, we talked about the importance of assessing our own behaviors first. Then we went on to assessing the learner's environment and what is occurring there, what they might value, how they might value some things. We also talked about discussing with the caregivers what their values are briefly. So we really have to assess values first, right? But then we also talked about assessment with action and what that looks like within behavior change and specifically with process-based analysis so that we really just kind of look at those little subtle shifts and becoming hyper observant and aware, right, of what's happening with those subtle behavior changes. So again, any questions specifically about that? Okay, fantastic. Yes. Well, thanks, Bree. I truly appreciate it. I really do think, again, I teach an assessments class for a graduate program, and I emphasize with them today too, when you start an when you start anything, you have to start with assessment. We all know this, right? Because we're pretty well into this field, many of us at least. Those of us who aren't, I think, still understand the necessity to assess. Otherwise, you wouldn't put in place a very robust behavior change program, right? It definitely wouldn't be something that might be effective long term, and it could possibly do harm, right? If we're not assessing and analyzing behaviors. So again, it's the same thing with ACT. We just keep that in mind the whole time. All right. Awesome, y'all. Moving right along. So we're getting into our literature review, and I am going to actually go through some of these articles with y'all. Well, not in depth, but I encourage y'all to. So I also will make sure that these are sent out in the email and then as well as uploaded to the website where you can access the recording as well as the survey link. So without further ado, this one really would talk about RFT first. Why does this one talk about RFT? I'm so glad you asked. Well, it's because I don't know if y'all are familiar with Mark Dixon's PEAK curriculum. Yeah, most of us are pretty familiar with that at this point in our career. You've at least heard of it to some degree. If not, it's okay. We'll talk about some more about it in just a little bit because it is one of those things. So it's actually part of their modules. When you're using symbolic language, that's the use of a metaphor. So there is actually research in the field of applied behavior analysis regarding the use of metaphors and the benefits of this. However, one of the things that it really does talk about is with RFT. So when you're talking about more of those communication and linguistic skills, as well as some of those other more pro-social skills, I argue that ACT is actually a pretty pro-social skill because it kind of encompasses everything, right? When we talk about the big frameworks. So there's that. We also have the exact same article twice. So good, good, good. This one's actually a book called Metaphor and Thought. It's about 687 pages. This is not behavior analytic, as you might be able to tell. However, I received my training and my graduate work in the School of Educational Psychology. So we had a lot of education pieces in what we did and what we learned and what we studied. So this one actually goes through what it talks about with linguistics and metaphors and thought. Well, y'all, linguistics is another word. I don't know if you know this or not, for verbal behavior. So just go with me on this. Verbal behavior in linguistics, we can have a whole frame and it's in the same frame. Okay. So we got this. It's just not a behavior analytic term. Practice some diffusion there, and it's going to be okay to use a term that's not behavior analytic. I promise. Pinky promise. Okay. Oh, sorry about my lack of good positioning there. So this one is actually one person's opinion, essentially, right? One of these good editorials. However, what she actually brings up are some really valid points that have a lot of robust evidence behind them as well about the art of scientific metaphors. And one of my favorite things about this article is that she basically says, listen, some of y'all say that there's no use or there's no place in science for the use of metaphors. And then she's like, I would say that there's no science without metaphors. So I would have to agree with that a little bit too, simply because we do often have to use some sort of symbolism to create a frame around what we're trying to present. And I'm going to give you a very good example right here about what I'm talking about. How many of you, show of hands in the chat, are familiar with SBA or SBT and PFA? Greg Hanley. Yes, Rosie's hands raised. Anybody else familiar with a little Greg Hanley? Little, perfect. Holly's hands raised. Brittany, yep, I know all of my East Coasters. Anybody from Massachusetts better have their hand raised. Okay, good. This makes me feel good. Awesome job, y'all. Beautiful. You're exactly right. Okay, so what are we trying to do when we talk about the synthesis or synthesized reinforcement or reinforcer? Is it that we are providing the exact reinforcer, or is it similar to the exact reinforcer? Is it the synthesis of the reinforcement or reinforcer? Rama, I like how you said that. Yep. Similar. Exactly. It's okay. You can speak out. I trust you. You got this. So the synthesis of reinforcement is the similar, right, thing that you're delivering. It's not the actual thing, it's the similar thing. And Hanley, in any of his workshops and presentations, not any of them, but in a lot of them, will talk about what happens whenever he says, I want to go to Disney World. What are you going to do? You're going to create this kind of inviting space, right? That makes it seem like Disney World. No, you're not going to fly him to Disney World, but you're going to present something that's similar to it in all of the ways that you possibly can, because that's the way that you're going to create this HRE, happy, relaxed, and engaged environment, right? So if we're talking about synthesized reinforcement, isn't that a metaphor for the actual reinforcement? Something to think about, I would say. Okay, so this one is specifically about ACT metaphors, so a mixed methods evaluation of experiential Experiential is also experiential metaphors. So, experiential intervention exercises are metaphorical exercises for values and committed action and act. This one's specifically for university students. Man, I wish that I had known about ACT when I was in college, and I really wish I had known about it in grad school. What about y'all? Hmm. Man, I really do. It would have been so much better. And then this one's a similar article. Again, so sorry about the placements, about how to increase values oriented behavior. So, in other words, committed actions, right? So, we do have quite a bit of behavioral science publications. This isn't going to come up in Java, at least not right now. I do believe that we're in this. Oh man, somebody said it perfectly the other day, and I want to say that it was Jen Ferris, in all honesty, and that's because I've spent the last week with her. But we're kind of in like this hiatus, and it's not really a hiatus, but it's in like we're in the back end. Everybody's backstage right now in this development stage, getting all of this research ready for publication because they're doing the work, right? Because about 5 years ago, we had this huge push for this is what we need to be doing. Why isn't everybody doing this? We had to talk about kind extinction. We had to talk about compassionate care. We had to talk about here's a way to live in your values. Now you have to do it as a behavior analyst. We could do all of those things, right? Talking about for ourselves. But now we have to talk about this with our learners. So the research is happening and we're in this push for publication right now. So that's where we are. That's why we're not seeing this evidence base. It's because the evidence is happening. I say that as somebody who uses this every day. The evidence is happening. It's just not being published right now because it's in IRB approval. It's just waiting to be approved. I don't know what article that one is, but it looks really cool. So we'll have to find that one. Uh, really glad that we're not too tired right now. Okay, so here are some of the metaphors that I used whenever I was first getting started in this. And they are fantastic metaphors for getting started yourself, working through the language and kind of practicing it almost like a routine. I think often about doing these types of metaphors as almost rehearsing for a play. So you're kind of running this one act in your mind, like one act play, one woman play, one man play, one person play, or you're doing a stand up comic routine, comedic routine. So just practice it until it becomes really fluid, right? Especially with your audience, because that's usually the most important thing whenever you're doing some sort of rehearsal, especially when you think about comedy. I mean, I don't know. I would never get up on a mic and tell people jokes. I have no problem pretending to be somebody else, but I'm never going to do it on like, and let me tell you what happened the other day. It just would not be very funny, I promise. I need real time. So Russ Harris has a great one. And I think we've all seen this meme, which is the person traveling on the train or traveling on the bus. And there are two people on opposite ends of the aisle. One is just kind of looking out the window, bored out of their minds, like this, probably not even staring at anything in particular, and cannot stop complaining the entire time. When are we there? Can we stop? Can I have another snack? I'm talking about my children. Just kidding. I'm uncomfortable. I need to poop. Please stop. Are we there yet? She's touching me. He's touching me. That's too loud. Are we there yet? Right? We know that road trip, buddy. Don't go with my children anywhere. But then there's the person on the other end of the aisle. It's me. Oh my gosh, look at that. I think that's a volcano. Do y'all see the volcano? We're in the middle of Texas. It's not a volcano. Oh, look at that. There's a cow. Oh no, that wasn't a cow. Oh no, 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 there's some cows. I think it's cattle, right? This is really beautiful. Did you see that sunset? Wow. Ooh, ooh, turn the song up. It's my favorite one. Or which Audible do you want to listen to? Right? all of those things. Do you want to listen to a new podcast? I've got a murder mystery that I'm dying to hear. Enjoying the ride. So, this is one of those things that Russ Harris loves to present with what ACT really does for us, which is we're supposed to be enjoying this ride. No, it's not always going to be uneventful. Sometimes we are going to hit a pothole. Sometimes there is going to be a flat tire. A couple of times you might run out of gas because you aren't paying attention. And instead, you're looking at the cattle. So, these are the things that can come up. However, which is going to be a more enjoyable trip? Which one's a better way to reach your destination, which is death? But which way is a better way to reach that destination? Complaining the whole time or really going through and trying to enjoy this, looking at moment by moment what's happening? Okay, so another one that he really likes to talk about, and these are all actually on this link on this website that's right here. So if you want to take it down, or we can click on it real quick. Can everybody see this okay? Cool. So this is just a great, these are just the add-ons. These are all free add-ons for his Act Mindfully book. This is actmindfully.com. But it has all of these extra metaphors and experiential exercises to try. It also has some tips with what to do with your learners. Again, this is geared toward adults. So paraphrase, summarize, make it person-centered. It's got video examples. It's a really, really, really great place to explore so that you can get started in some of these things in a more in-depth way. Cool. All right, back to it. So dropping anchor is another one. These are all really great ways to just kind of practice like acceptance as well as diffusion, moving forward, because it's really what ACT is about. It's not about making sure that what you're doing is avoiding the pain, but it is about moving forward to some degree, right? So that you've got your values in line with what your actions are, and you can't be stuck in this kind of stasis, which we call cognitive fusion. But when you get yourself stuck in these kind of negative thought patterns, that also means that you're usually not engaging in any sort of committed action or committed behavior, right? Cool. Getting back to the screen. Sorry, y'all. Thanks for being patient with me as we toggle. Okay. So, Mark Dixon, and I separated the two because Russ Harris is not a behavior analyst. However, Mark Dixon and Stephen Hayes are. Stephen Hayes doesn't really claim to be a behavior analyst anymore, and I don't blame him. That's fine. And he's probably not board certified anymore, but I could also be completely wrong. I would assume that he won't say that he's a behavior analyst because of that. He seems to be a very ethical person, in my opinion. So one of my favorites, and if you attended the APBA workshop that I did with Jen and Madi about our book Reframe coming out next month, you did this first exercise with me, which is I want you to gather as many things as you can think of that are kind of heavy and cumbersome. Or you can really just find as many objects as you can. And they all represent another thing or worry that's going on in your life. So grab one thing and say, like, this is the stress that you're carrying from work. This is the stress that you're caring for your family. This is the stress that you have for your clients. This is the stress that you have because eggs cost $10. This is the stress that you have because you're tired. Okay, now I want us to just kind of think about this for a second. I need you to go ahead and can you pick that up for me? Can you pick up one more thing? Why are we carrying all of this around then? Why am I carrying around the stresses that I can't control or the worries that about my family whenever I know that they're safe, or the stuff going on with my clients or whatever else that might be, or the fact that I'm tired? We let it go because there's no need for us to be carrying these things whenever all we really need to be doing is just moving forward without this extra weight. The way that Stephen Hayes does this, and he has some great videos for this one too, which is you have one person on one end of the rope. So this is a fun one to do with learners, especially kids. They have a lot of fun with this one. Just make sure you have some safe places to fall, or a crash pad, or you're doing them on a couch or something like that. But you grab one end of the rope and you tell your kiddo to grab the other end of the rope, and you say, okay, so I want you to think about everything that they don't really have to think about anything, but I want you to pull on this rope as hard as you can and try to get it out, try to get the rope out of my hand. And they'll tug and they'll tug and they'll tug and they'll tug. And then I want you to then say, okay, now I want you to, oh man, how did it go? Now I'm going to try to take the rope out of your hand. And whatever you do, I just want this to be, I want you to pull with all, I want you not, you don't necessarily have to pull, but I want you to hold on to the rope with all of your might. And yeah, I want you to like pull on that thing so hard, right? And say, like, I want you to be still though, don't move. And I'm going to really pull on this thing and make it kind of like cumbersome and kind of comical. And then ask, like, say, like, hey, what's going on? You seem like this is really hard. And then they'll kind of laugh about it a little bit, right? And then finally, I want you to say something to them about like, well, what would happen if you just let go? And usually they just let the rope go, and or like they kind of look for a second, like, well, I can't let the rope go. Why should I let the rope go? Well, it's really hard. It's really challenging, right? You've been pulled all over the place. So you really want to give them this kind of like picture in their mind about they don't have to carry on all of these things. They don't have to hold on to all of these things, but it's a really silly one to do. And again, my exhaustion is not explaining this one well, which is why we gave video models. I did think a little bit ahead in that I knew that my explanations might not be fantastic today. So any questions though so far about some of these metaphors? I will say Mark Dixon has a curriculum called AIM, Accept, Identify, and Move. And flat tire and climbing the ladder both are in the AIM curriculum. And they don't make sense for children for the most part, because a lot of kids have never experienced changing a flat tire before on a car. Some of them have never even experienced changing a flat tire on a bike. So why would they have any sort of idea of what it looks like to have a flat tire and change a flat tire? It's not in their current frame, right? So what I would suggest, if you decide to use something that has this kind of curriculum like AIM, really individualize it to the learner. And I say this for any sort of curriculum. If you are reading word for word and expecting word for word the same response, that's going to be rote responding. That's not behavior that's actually going to be something that's meaningful. That's my opinion, but I'm sticking with it. Okay. So how are we going to do this? How do we make these things our own? Like what we were just talking about. How are you going to measure your outcomes? Hopefully it's with frequency, rate, duration, latency, all of those things that have some really good time-based measurements. What are you going to do? Well, you're probably going to make a little bit of a mess. That's fine. You can use some art. We love to do science experiments at our center too, because sometimes our experiments go horribly wrong, and it's another way to just practice with ACT and provide more metaphors in real time. And then for you, you're going to read those behavioral shifts, like what we talked about in our assessments, right? All of those things that we gathered during our assessment process, that's what we're going to be reading so that we can know how we need to shift what we're doing, whatever the metaphor might be. We can be like, I'm losing them, pivot. Now we're back into it. All right, I see the cognitive shift happening because physically there's something that I've observed that's also happening. Okay, we're going to move into making a plan. So the thing that I like to do is do a little bit of scheduling. It helps me. It helps our learners. They like to know what to expect, especially if we've got some of our, what we talked about last time, which was those core yearnings. So if we have that core yearning for coherence, the yearning for orientation, making plans are really helpful for that. And schedules are really helpful for that. It also helps your technicians know what to do. I will say that with one of our learners, like um, our technicians are so creative that we really don't have to do this anymore. They usually either pull something out from one of the curriculums that we have, or they are just kind of, they've already kind of thought about it because they're like, oh, I had this idea and I thought we could do this with Legos today or whatever it might be. Um, so I always like to start with a matrix. I also like to end with a matrix. The main reason for that is that it is seeing if your teaching metaphors were effective at all. So, what we might do is say on a Monday, start with having them do that assessment matrix, right? Like what we did last month. And you have them record all of their values, some actions, self as context, present moment, ways to practice diffusion, as well as things to accept, right? And how they'll accept those things. So we'll have them do that. Then, whatever was kind of the area that looked like it might have been more of a strength, we're going to start there. So, a lot of people, they value seems to be the thing that comes up the most. For whatever reason, I blame Brene Brown, but values come up quite a bit, and everybody loves to use this word, including myself. But it makes it then kind of high probability. We know as good behavior analysts that we should start with things that are high probability in nature because it helps build what? Behavioral momentum. Yes, I heard that. Way to go. Way to go. Perfect. So, yeah, so we'll start there. The bullseye is an exercise that's in both Russ Harris's as well as Stephen Hayes's work, and I think also in Mark Dixon's. So you'll find it anywhere. If you literally Google values bullseye, I guarantee you're going to find it. But all you have to do is make a sheet of paper with a bullseye so that they can see this is the thing that I value the most. This is my secondary value. This is my tertiary value. And then out from there, if they actually need to, or if they need to go funnel wise, they can say, like, oh, yeah, that's actually what I value the most, right? And it just helps us all kind of see that in real time. And again, visualize what it is that everybody values or what your learner values. Um, this next exercise for hand. So it's a diffusion exercise about really being able to see how far away things can change, right? So we have a tendency to think that all of our worries are like right here, right? So we can't see anything else that's happening around us. We cannot be in the present moment if our hand is in front of our face, right? Everybody practice this right now. So this is all of those intrusive thoughts, right? All of those things that are preventing you from engaging in committed actions and maybe moving forward or practicing in a different way. But then as you move your hand out and do it kind of slowly, you'll notice that your perspective shifts and changes, and that you can actually see the world around you and engage in the present moment. But you need to have this kind of separation, which is literally what this is doing. So you're adding the separation between those intrusive thoughts or whatever it is that's preventing you from moving forward with committed action. That's all that exercise is about. So then the next day, maybe you're going to do a mindful walk. We might do like a nature walk where you have to come up with several different things that might be values aligned while you're on your walk. Or maybe you're doing more of a present moment nature walk. It doesn't matter, but you're making a plan. I don't, this one says standing because I think that I was like feet to floor. So a lot of times you might do like stomping exercise or something like that to really show like you're right here. You're nowhere else in time other than in this moment. Then, of course, everybody knows leaves on a stream. Your thoughts are just like leaves floating down a stream. Much like values, I think that we can get a little bit more creative, which is why I hope y'all are here right now. So let's get we've got some more stuff going. And then, of course, ending with another matrix just to see, did we learn anything this week? Was anything helpful? Let's see. Cool. Any questions about making a plan? Okay. So now we're getting into our video models. These are my children. So I haven't used any clients. These are also from several years ago. This first one is how I like to introduce the matrix to kids. And at this time, I actually don't know how old Luella was, maybe two. This is really early learners, right? Um, Hold on. George apparently needs to go outside. Give me 1 second. It's about to snow, so that's probably why. Okay, so this is how I like to introduce the matrix to anyone. I'll include these links for you because this video we're not going to have time to watch the whole thing because it's 12 minutes long. Um, but just an example. Oh, I want the same shirt.
Hey, CP, what are we making? Cheese. That's awesome. What do we have in here? What are they called? Ingredients. So what all do we have? What's something that you feel a lot? Do you feel happy a lot?
Yes.
Yeah. What's something else that you sometimes feel?
I think mad at violence.
You get mad at your friends sometimes. Okay. What else?
So I think happy at you and my brother and my dad and my books and you and myself.
Yeah, and yourself. That's so cool. Okay, so these are all of the things that we might like experience. What's something that might make you feel kind of sad? I love how you gave so many happy examples. And we need to all.
So Garrett pinched me and that makes me really sad.
So sometimes when friends pinch us, can we pretend that this is like what happens whenever your friend pinches you?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. You're welcome. You want to do it too? Okay, cool. Enjoy this. Okay, so Thomas is joining us now too. So Luella just gave us an example that this is what happens whenever her friend pinches her. Okay, and then Thomas, what's something that happens to you sometimes during the day?
My friends are not being nice.
When your friends aren't being nice? Yeah.
Ooh,
So can we say that this is when your friends aren't being nice?
okay, sure.
Okay, cool. Is there a lot that we can
So our ingredients, right, are those kind of situations. But then we move forward a little bit.
Thomas, why don't you shake it up and see if your sister can also look at that and see if that helps us right now since we're both kind of mad and sad.
Oh, sorry, this happened. We had a moment.
Yes.
What else do you like to do?
So Miss Katie yelled at me.
Sometimes people can yell at us, right? And what do? Do we yell back? Because does that help? What's something you can do instead of yelling? Hey, what you can say, hey, can I have it?
Well, I haven't even had the food.
Hey. So how does that make you feel right now? Yeah, and how does it make you feel right now?
Hey.
May I have it, please? And then I'll help. Let's shake it up together. Okay, so
It's not brother, it's mine.
hey, I think the brother brought it over to show us how we can sometimes look at this to calm down a little bit whenever we feel mad and sad. So Thomas, why don't you shake it up and see if your sister can also look at that and see if that helps us right now since we're both kind of mad and sad.
Cool. So that was a moment just because obviously that's real life. That's what's going to happen when you're doing metaphors, especially if you're doing it in a group setting, right? But then we move forward and we talk about what the rest of this all looks like.
You know.
No. But is it still the same? Like it's still sugar and flour and butter all together, right?
Yeah, well, the chocolate chips go into the dough and it becomes cookie dough.
Yeah. Okay, question. We're about to put these in the oven. What's gonna happen then?
It's just gonna turn into cookies.
But are they still the same?
Uh,
Is that kind of like you?
Yeah.
So
Cool. So that's a little bit of like self as context, right? So the cookie matrix is essentially about teaching our kids about each little piece about what the matrix is or the hexaflex is, but using an experiential metaphor such as making cookies. Again, the video model, I will make sure that you'll have a link to it just so that you can see the whole thing and not have any more of like, oh no, what happens? Does it ever get resolved? It gets resolved. Don't worry. Everybody's happy at the end. I'm kidding. But I wanted y'all to see that specific example too with the water bottle, mostly because I do think that that is more real life, right? We often will go to YouTube and we'll see the videos of like the perfect video model of the ideal scenario of what it's supposed to look like. And then we all get into a session and we're like, the wheels are not even close to the axle and not near the vehicle anymore, right? Like they have come off and we are in a bad situation. So I just wanted to see like sometimes we can bring things back in with still modeling and using ACT and also just some good ABA strategies like neutralizing situations, prompting for functional communication, things like that.
I
Cool.
love you, Dad.
Okay. She's a sweet pea. So this one is actually one of my all-time favorite ones. We're gonna watch this guy because this again, little bitty kids can do this and it makes sense for them.
Okay, hey, question. How does your hand feel right now?
Notice the cookies.
Does it feel cold?
No.
What does it feel like?
One.
Warm. Okay, now put your hand in the bowl. What's in our bowl?
It's
Now how does your hand feel?
cold.
Cold. That's really cool. Does that help you really focus on what we're doing right now?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Cool. So that's actually a really fast one to do. It also works really well too if like the learner's kind of escalated and you have them do that because it also is a little bit of a diffusion kind of difference, right? It will do a quick shift if you have that learner do something that is really different than what their body currently is feeling. Okay, let's see.
All right. Hey, dude. Okay, so other than sports, what's something that you really, really value?
I like singing
Yeah, I love to sing.
and I like to perform.
You do? Okay, cool. Did you do a performance today?
Yeah, I did it at the church at Winmore.
You did. Was it fun? Did you practice the songs that you performed today a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We practice Sunday mornings,
That's great.
and sometimes we have a play like I had today. Sometimes we have other churches come, but we had one come this time, and other times they don't really come a lot.
Yeah. So what would have happened today if Mr. Donovan said, okay, we're going to sing a song today, we're going to perform it, but we're not going to practice it before?
Then nobody will know what to do.
Why not?
Because if this is my teacher right here, and he said we're just gonna do a song that nobody knows, and we're just gonna not even sing anything.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to sing anything, right? What is a song that you really enjoy singing, but maybe you don't know all of the music and all of the words to do?
Probably shine your light.
That was a good one. Ooh, what's
Okay. So then we went through practicing a song together. And the reason why we did that, right, is because we were practicing committed action. So I had him, it was BST, right? So we had this conversation about, well, what is a committed action? I never said the words committed action though to him, did I? Because that wasn't what, that wouldn't be then what a metaphor is. We're using symbolic language to get these types of behaviors to happen, right? So this is also a committed action that he was doing just by sitting with me. It was a committed action for me too. I like mother-son moments like that. Okay, and this exercise, actually, most of us know from COVID, but I also like to look at it as a diffusion exercise or metaphor.
some space too?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're gonna. Well, we're gonna talk about space right now. We're gonna talk about whenever we have those kind of feelings that we have that we don't really like. Like, what feeling are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling it's kind of like the opposite of happy and a little upset.
So kind of, yeah, a little upset, kind of frustrated, right? Well, how are you feeling right now?
Okay.
Okay. So sometimes when we're feeling kind of like that frustrated and a little upset, what happens whenever our friends are doing things that we don't like? What about when our friends are doing things that we don't like?
Um, we just deal with it.
Do
Or
we?
we could walk away.
We can walk away. When we walk away, are we close to our friends anymore?
No.
No. What happens whenever we walk away from them?
Well, what if they follow us?
Well, then that's what we're gonna have to talk about, right? So we walk away from our friends, we get a little bit of space. But you're right. What if they follow us? Oh man, how does that make you feel whenever your friends follow you, whenever you try to walk away and get some space?
Makes me feel a little upset.
A little more upset. So we need to find some more space, right? Let's find out. When you feel really frustrated, sometimes does it help whenever we do our dance parties?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes did it feel better, Llewellyn, whenever we shake it up a little bit? What happened to those feelings?
They spread it out.
Yeah, what happened when we needed to get a little bit of space?
It cleared it up.
Isn't that so cool?
Yeah.
So sometimes,
Okay, so again, that was just like the pepper in the water with adding a little drop of soap. And what happens? I think that's a beautiful diffusion exercise to do with kids. It's so simple. All of these things, I mean, nothing really costs a lot of money, right? Pepper, some ingredients to make cookies that I have in my pantry all the time anyway, right? The music book that I have with Thomas, like none of these things are expensive. They're all things that we have on hand. So we don't always have to bring this bag of tricks with us whenever we're doing these types of exercises. We can usually use the things that we have in our homes, that we have in our centers, and things like that. I love to use things with paint or other arts and crafts because it's, again, just a very simple thing. Corn syrup, cornstarch, shaving cream, all of these things are really inexpensive things that can go really far whenever we're doing these types of fun experiential metaphors and examples.
okay, Kate, let's get some space too.
Oh, sorry, y'all. Yikes. Okay. Okay. Any questions about those video models before we move into our last little bit? All right. I'm going to take a no response as everything seems to be okay. Beautiful. So now it's time for you to do this. Go ahead and take a sheet of paper if you need to. I always encourage it, or if you want to take notes on your phone or on your computer screen, doesn't matter, but make a good old job aid / task analysis of the things that you need to do. You're going to need to say, well, what's my overall goal? What am I aiming to teach here? Write that down. How am I going to pinpoint it? How am I going to operationally define this? How am I going to measure this? How long do I anticipate this activity to take? If you notice, I mean, with the exception of baking cookies, none of these things lasted more than a few minutes. They were about 1 to 4 minutes long. So keep that in mind, right? When we're doing our audience participation goals, don't make your duration 20 minutes for them to participate when they're 6 years old. It's just, you're setting yourself, you're setting the learner, you're setting everybody up for failure. So make sure that you're doing something that's going to be child-led and developmentally appropriate as far as time is concerned. What behavior are you actually looking to decrease too? So if you notice, a lot of times in our video models, we were talking about frustration, we were talking about upset, we were literally fighting with each other at one point. So those are behaviors that we're looking to decrease through some of these metaphors so that we can say like, hey, do you remember when we were talking about this earlier? Here we are. We're going to have to practice this walking away, this finding space. What's your backup plan? What are you going to do whenever the shit hits the fan and it does not go right and the wheels are off and the shaving cream doesn't foam and I don't know, everything's going wrong. Or the baking soda and the vinegar for some reason don't react, even though we know that that's not what's going to happen. But maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody replaced the vinegar with water and you didn't realize it. And then you're going to review that metaphor and you're going to record the information that's important to you, right? You're going to review the information that they need to know. You're going to review what we're talking about, but in a way that's appropriate for them. Like you're not going to say, and now we're going to engage in present moment mindfulness exercises to a 3-year-old. You're going to do something like, hey, what do you see over there? What color? I spy something blue, right? You're going to do things that are age and developmentally appropriate. Okay, let's think about too, what materials are we going to do? How am I going to present this metaphor in a way that's interesting to our kids? So for committed actions, I know what Thomas values. I know that he values sports. I know that he values singing. And I know that some of his preferred I know that his sports teams, I know that his favorite baseball team is the Yankees. I know that his favorite band is the Beatles because I've raised him right. So that's what I'm going to incorporate with what we do and what we talk about. I know Luella loves cookies. I know she loves chocolate and candy. So I'm going to incorporate those things as much as I can whenever we're together. I know that what some of our values are, right? I know Luella loves and values helping, truly. So if something's going on, I can shift it to, can you help me with this? Instead of, can you do this? Right? I'm going to use those things whenever we're going through these metaphors and whenever we're creating these metaphorical exercises. Then what materials do I need? Better gather them, but I want to make sure they're free and cheap. Rocks. Rocks are a good one. There's a great exercise about taking a rock or a stone and using crayon and writing on it with crayon. Awesome. We like to paint on rocks a lot. We also like to hold them to see how things are heavy, right? All of these things are really kind of cool and things to do. We like to do the rain exercise. So we'll take a cup of water and shaving cream and food coloring. And we'll talk about how each of those are kind of like things that are going on in our lives as another type of diffusion or acceptance exercise. And then seeing how like the colors all come together and make a rainbow. So those are things that we like to do whenever we're developing metaphors. But you're going to have to be the one who develops it, right? We've got great books right now. There are really fantastic references and resources that are available for kids and teenagers and families that are all about experiential metaphors. Some of them are not going to be very applicable for your learner. You will not, and I guarantee you this, you will not be able to take one that's word for word and replicate it word for word and expect perfect outcomes. That's not realistic. And hopefully we know that now by knowing that most things that do that will just evoke rote responding, right? Like what we talked about earlier. So does that make any sense about how we develop these metaphors? Oh, awesome. And sorry, my little chat preview didn't come up. Usually it does. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Good. I'm glad y'all are already thinking about learners to do this with too, because it's a lot of fun. And I will say this too, the reason why I said to get like practice some of these things and get really used to them, do those BSTs, right? And just keep looking at different resources. Go to YouTube, look at ACT metaphors too, because you're going to see lots of fun video examples. And then you'll practice these things too. And the more fluent you get with this practice with this one kiddo, the better you'll get with really any kiddo, because you're going to be able to tailor it and individualize it just as you do with all of your great programming to meet that particular kiddo. Awesome. It is tough. It's tough to get uncomfortable. It's like really uncomfortable, right? To get creative and to think outside of the box, especially as behavior analysts, because we love the process. We love a smooth and clear process. This is not a smooth and clear process, but this is one of my favorite ways to create this type of process is by making it your own. Do it stepwise, be really strategic and methodical with how you're doing it so that it is robust, it is measurable. You know what it is that you're looking for, and you know what it is that you're teaching and what your hope is for that learner because you've already assessed them. You know what it is that's going to be their kind of strength. So if you need to pivot to the strength, pivot to the strength. If you need to really go through this challenging valley of going through like, hey man, we're going to have to stay in the moment right now because this perseverative behavior is intense, right? That's okay. It's going to take some redirections. It's going to take some time, but you know what you're measuring, you know what you're looking for. Okay. Awesome, y'all. Whoops. Okay. So now it's your turn. Bree, you already have your learner. You've got it. What does that person's assessment say about them? Or what did you learn from that assessment? If not, go back last month, go back through those exercises and see how you can reassess and reevaluate those strengths, those interests, those values, right? Then write that plan, right? Go back over here, write your plan. Just like what we would do for any good treatment plan writing, any good goal development, you're doing the exact same thing. We're generalizing the application that you learned in graduate school to developing metaphors now. Does that make sense? You can do it. I promise. Okay. Do y'all have any questions for me? I am going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in the chat right now because I forgot to do it last time. Thanks, Brittany. It's just a feedback form. The other feedback form is on the link for, or in the on the website for Podia where you accessed the purchase. So please feel free to do that. If you haven't emailed ace@acrossenvironments.com for your CEU certificate, please do. Just make sure that you provide your CEU certificate number. And your participation this evening is all you need to receive that certificate because everybody was amazingly, did a great job of just making sure that you were present and available and going back through. Yeah, don't worry, Rosie, you aren't the only one who missed it. It's because I didn't say anything. So it's really difficult to know what to do if nobody instructs you what to do. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat as well, ace@acrossenvironments.com. If you email them, you're going to get a response that it's going to take about 2 weeks. And that's just because my virtual assistant is a busy lady. So I like to give her as much time as she needs. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I always love helping everyone. If you need additional resources, please let me know. I'm also going to send a follow-up email with the recording that has the other YouTube links in there, as well as access to the articles that we talked about tonight and the 687-page book. But beautiful. Any questions, though, before we sign off? Okay, y'all are fantastic. Remember, it's okay. Sometimes things get really, really challenging. Sometimes we don't want to do the hard work. We don't want to exercise that creative muscle, and that's okay. But we can go through the challenge. You aren't doing this alone, so you can always reach out for help and take a deep breath. Have a sip of tea, and it's going to be all right. One step at a time. All right, everyone. Have a great one.